Welcome to Control Alt Dev, the podcast where we dig into the chaos of tech and come out with something useful. Today we're diving into prompt engineering, AI agents, and why Peter Lowe might be the smartest under-resourced guy in automation. Sean?
Yeah, so it's the first podcast in a while, isn't it, Paul? So I've just come back from the summer break. I don't know what you got up to, but I came back from Thailand, took the kids to Koh Samui, holiday of a lifetime, as they say. Saw pink dolphins, spent time with rescued elephants, and even had a rather eye-opening encounter with the ladyboys, which my son wasn't very happy with, Paul. I've never seen someone walk so quickly through a certain area of Thailand. What about yourself?
I don't know if I can beat that. We went across Belgium and France on a bit of a drive-in holiday. So, yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, really nice to go somewhere different for a change. Definitely non-English speaking. So, yeah, no, it was really good. Thank you. So I think in terms of today, really, we've got a very special episode for our listeners, haven't we? Because we've got our first ever guest interview with Peter Lowe. So I've known Peter for a number of decades, and we've kind of worked on projects in the past and everything. And then we've been bumping into each other, and the conversation is always about two things: music and AI. So we met up recently, and then I was straight on the phone to Sean and said, look, we need to get Peter onto our podcast because he's doing some really, really interesting stuff. So, I guess over to you, Peter. Do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hi, yeah, my name's Peter Lowe. I'm the Associate Director for Marketing and Technology at Auctus Management Group, and I've been working there for the last 5 years. And over the last 2.5 years, I've been sort of dabbling in AI, really from when GPT-3 came out, and I got really interested in it. And over the past couple of years, I've watched hundreds of hours of YouTube videos, so you don't have to. And hopefully I'm going to sort of impart some of the things that I've learned over that time and some of the things that I'm implementing in my role.
Perfect. I think to give context, obviously I know your background. It'd be really good if people could understand, whether you're a techie at the back or what you've done previously. So just a quick overview of, your background and your career to date.
Well, I've always worked either in creative agencies or in marketing. So, yeah, sometimes it's been client side, sometimes agency side. For a few years, I ran a small design agency called Blackberry Design, and that's really where I got to know Paul. My background is not tech or dev. I started out as a graphic designer, and then I sort of pivoted, did a marketing degree probably about 20 years ago. That's my background. I don't know any code. I think the last time I wrote any code was Visual Basic in about 1981, typing in from a magazine to get a game, done on the ZX81. So that's giving away my age, Proud of having a ZX81 with a 64K RAM pack and professional keyboard. The world was my oyster.
We've all been there, Peter. Spectrum 48K I am. So that was my introduction to basic coding, was. So, yeah. So that's interesting, Peter. So for the listeners, you've had no coding experience apart from those
no, a little bit of HTML that you sort of pick up, like doing things like MailChimp, templates and stuff like that, but nothing. No.
So you mentioned you were looking at GPT-3. So when was that? For the listeners, when did that come out? What was that?
I reckon it's probably 2.5 years ago that it was sort of started to be more visible. I can't say that I was into AI in any way before then. It just sort of seemed to pop up on a few feeds, and I thought, this seems interesting. I think the idea of giving me the extra sort of ability to do things that I didn't have the capability to do before, that's what really appealed to me. It sort of like amplified my effort, and it sort of filled in a lot of gaps that I had. As I said, I'm not a developer. So I, through years of experience and dealing with people in like marketing agencies, design agencies, I'm used to dealing with people, understanding their problems, listening to it, sort of defining the problems they're facing, looking at a process or a solution. And that's what I find very interesting, not so much the coding part, which seems sort of counterintuitive because at the moment I'm doing a boot camp on learning how to build AI workflows. But that's really just so I can understand what the possibilities are, rather than me wanting to go front and center and say, I can build you anything. That's not going to happen. I can scope anything. I can understand your problems. I can define the problem and help you solve it. And that's where I think the interest lies for me. And that's probably where my skill set sits.
And would you suggest that you are an AI consultant then? Are you one of these guys that, because you've been doing it 2.5 years, you can go into a company and listen to their problems and try and look for automated solutions? Is that?
Yeah, I think I probably could do. I don't do that at the moment because I'm employed, so it's not, I haven't got that hankering to sort of, work 50 hours a week and then go and do another 30 as a side hustle. I'm sort of a bit past that. Maybe if I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I might, but not now. But I certainly see it as a potential route for me. I registered a company called Smart AI Studio, but I haven't done anything with it yet. I probably need to write a custom GPT to build me a website, write a business plan. I've just been busy with other things.
So the company you're working for, are they defining the automated AI?
Yeah, well, in a sense, I'm given a lot of freedom because really I'm truthfully probably the only one who really understands what its capabilities are. So I'll put forward proposals to the board and stuff like that and say this is what I think we can do. Obviously in an organization like ours, I'm looking quite a lot at back-end systems, so how we can improve operational efficiency, reduce time. As a marketer, I'm thinking building social media calendars, generating content, blog generators, and I've built some quite complex things doing that. So yeah, that's sort of where it comes from. That's what I'm doing. I mean, if you were an AI consultant, I think you would focus on the front end, like lead generation, things that bring in money. I mean, who cares if you save 10 hours for an admin person? Truthfully, you're going to find it hard to sell that to someone because it's not generating money. Whereas if you've got something like a lead generation system or a LinkedIn prospecting tool or something like that, they can see that there's potential value in that, in the way they could do outreach. I mean, I've built all sorts of things, cold email outreach, LinkedIn prospect agent, all sorts of things. Some of those are in Mind Studio, some of them are custom GPTs.
Okay, so you're introducing a program called Mind Studio. So for those listeners out there, what is it? Is it a coding tool for AI? What is it? What is Mind Studio?
Probably the closest thing is NAN, but NAN really, I believe, is a great tool, but it really is very reliant on a development background. I think it's very hard to implement. You see a lot of really interesting things on YouTube, like workflows and things like that, and you think that would be great. And then when you actually get into it, you try and build it yourself, and it's sort of like 5 days down the rabbit hole, and it's still not working properly. And that could be for a multitude of reasons, and one of them probably being that I'm not a dev, so some of those things are quite tricky for me to understand. But Mind Studio is more of a sort of it's sort of like a no-code builder. You've got blocks, you create workflows. So once you've defined a process and what you want to do, you can link the blocks, and it's got different functionality in it. It's just a very easy to use, quite intuitive system. One thing that you can do with it is you can take an N8 workflow, a screen grab, drop it into it, and it will build the workflow in Mind Studio. And then it's got some really good features which they've just released called a debugger, which has probably came out a few weeks ago. And they've got another thing called Generate Insights. So when the workflow fails for whatever reason, you can look in the debugger. It will generate the insights. It gives you a plan. It tells you what's gone wrong, which is great for someone like me. And then even if I can't understand it, then I can cut and paste it, put it into ChatGPT and say, explain it to me like I'm a 10-year-old. And one of my favorite instructions is, you're going to have to explain it to me like I'm assembling IKEA furniture. I need step by step, bolt by bolt. And it does it, and it helps me, and I can get them working. I mean, hopefully I'll get quicker over time. But yeah, I find it a really, really interesting system. Great community, lots of support, And the boot camp that I'm doing, is very, very interesting, very rewarding. And I do think it's a great product. I've got no affiliation with it other than I'm just using it. But they have a Chrome extension called Mind Studio, and I'd say to everyone, just check it out. It's free to use. So go to Chrome, look for Mind Studio, download it. There's 100 agents in there that are free to use. And you'll see some amazing things. Deep research. You want to find out about something, go to a page all about it. It'll scrape the URL. It'll go off. It'll do a research plan. It'll come back to you with a full report, and it'll cite all the sources. Hours of work done just from your Chrome extension. So there's some brilliant things in there.
And we can link to that in the show notes as well, can't we? Because I think we'll link to the Chrome extension and we'll link to Mind Studio. I think what's really interesting is I was at a course earlier this week, and they inevitably get onto the AI tooling out there, and it's unlimited, isn't it? And people are always looking for, well, what are the most popular and stuff. And the two that came up as what people are using most for workflows are make.com and zapier.com. And then it was a consensus in the room. It was non-technical people that N8N was too complicated, exactly like you said, Peter. Like they just found it that, as me and Sean, as developers, it's like, oh my God, this simplifies a lot. Whereas for other people, N8N complicates a lot. So when you first showed me Mind Studio, my first impressions were just absolutely blown away by it. And I think as well, what really got me was the enterprise grade and the clients who are using it and the support for like SOC 2 and GDPR and kind of, I'm sure I've seen on the website that central government use it. So it's like, it's a really established tool. It's not something that's just, we're promoting as like, I'll go and check it out. It's the next thing on the block. It's like a well-embedded enterprise grade workflow system. And that was when I started to look in it again. And it was just some of the stuff that you've talked about, Peter. Hopefully that's the first value add for people, is if they've never heard of Mind Studio, go and check it out. And the Chrome extension, I mean, having only spoken the other day, it's phenomenal. It's just, and we're talking about ultimately Peter's role in the organization. It sounds like you're leading the AI transformation rather than, like you say, being an external consultant, Sean. But it's having that realization that, AI replaces the doer. That's what it's ultimately going to do. AI will build its own agents. AI will replace anybody who's doing a role where you're doing something, you're making something. Theoretically, you're at most threat from AI because it's able to do those things. What it needs is a driver. It needs somebody with a strategic goal. So therefore, when you're talking earlier on about defining a process, Peter, that's where you excel, because it's that experience and that background to then know how to use AI to get it to define the process. But you don't necessarily see yourself building the workflow out, because you could get somebody else to do it, or ultimately the agent software will be able to build its own agents, which is a crazy thought. So I guess stepping back a bit, in terms of, like, you talked earlier about GPTs and about defining the process and stuff. I know that one thing we've spoke about is you've invested a lot of time and energy into like making sure that the prompts are as good as they can be in prompt engineering. So do you want to talk a little bit around, your journey into that and what you've ended up doing in the business? Because I think this part is like mind blowing for some people.
Yeah, no problem. So I started to use ChatGPT, and like most people, just put some prompts in, and the prompts were vague, and it wasn't really getting the results that I want. And I use the analogy when I talk to people, because they say, oh, when you do stuff, your results are so much better than ours. And I said, well, it's because I prompt it better. I give it more context and things like that. If you said to, I don't know, someone to say, can you get me a pint of milk? They go to the shop, they get a pint of milk. What are they going to get? Skimmed, semi-skimmed, oat milk, whatever. You haven't given them enough. You've given them enough to do something, but not enough to do it accurately or well. So that's sort of what I think about with the prompts. And so there's a few frameworks that you can use, and there's different ones, like Craft is one. And I've written it down, sorry, just so I can remember exactly what it is. But it's context, role, audience, format, task, and sometimes tone as well. So if you give something the context, so you might say, I want you to act as, I don't know, in a particular role, and you've got X amount of experience, and this is the problem I want you to solve. This is the outcome I want. This is the output that I want at the end of it. Here's some supporting information. And if you build a custom GPT, you can add knowledge files. So if it's about your business, you can upload all your company brochures and it will read those and understand them. So when you ask it to do something, it understands the context of who it's doing it for. And this is the way you sort of get better results. So you've got to be clear. If you're not clear, if you're vague, vague prompts get vague results. And that's what I realized quite quickly. And so I sort of started to look at that. Then when I started to do things more than once, I thought, well, I'll build a custom GPT. There's another thing you can do, which is called projects, but you can't share projects. You can only use those yourself. So you can put knowledge files in and talk with it. But if you want to share it with others, you've got to do a custom GPT. And you just put the knowledge files in, you give it a name, give it a quick description, and give it some custom instructions. And then you can use that over and over again. All you have to do is just call up that agent. And I've built about 50 of those for different people in the organization. Some are used every day, some are used once a month, but they're used more than once, so they're worth building.
So in terms of those 50 GPTs that you've built across the business, and you've talked about like garbage in, garbage out, basically in terms of the instructions. So for the point of a GPT, the value is in the instructions. So how do you create? So you've got your acronym CRAFT, and then what have you done to make sure that every time you create a GPT or every time you create a prompt, you're getting the best possible prompt? Because I know you've done something. That's always
yeah. So there's a couple of things that I've done. I've done one thing which is like a prompt architect. So I basically gave it a load of different prompt frameworks and put them into its knowledge. And then I've said, then basically the instruction is, you are a helpful assistant, expert at crafting prompts using the appropriate framework. I will give you some information. I want you to ask me some qualifying questions until you're satisfied that you've got enough information to build an effective prompt. That's pretty much it.
That's the reason that you're getting the results that you're getting, because what's fascinating to me is I talk to a lot of people on a daily basis, businesses who are like scared of AI, businesses that are fully embedded in AI. And you were the first person genuinely who I'd heard had actually created a GPT to create the prompt. So it's that thought process of a step before you even get to it. Most people just go into GPT and it's got like a builder, hasn't it, where you can just give it almost the minimal amount of information. It's like, oh, I want you to be a logo designer, and that's all you tell it, and it will create you a GPT. And you'll go along this line of thinking, I've got this thing that's amazing, it knows everything. Whereas actually what you want to do is you want to take something that knows everything and make it an expert on a very specific subject. And then those are the different 50 things that you're rolling out across your business. But it was that to me was a massive nugget when we spoke recently. Was like, I mean, I've gone, it sounds stupid now, but I've gone and done it. And the quality, it's literally a prompt engineering GPT before you do whatever the task is. I was absolutely blown away. And it's not just about the volume of content in there, but it's like you say, it's not going in and say, create a prompt. It's ask me questions before you do that. And you probably go through 5 to 10 questions with the prompt engineer to get to the knowledge it needs to create the prompt before you even get to do the task. But
because it's asking you who's your audience, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do that. And so using that prompt engineer, you can create a prompt, which you can then use in a custom GPT.
Yeah.
Because you can just give it a name, give it a description, put the custom instructions in.
Yeah.
And in a custom GPT, you've got the ability to add knowledge files. So like I said, you could add all your company case studies, you could add all your brochures, which is what I do, depending on what the use is, like blog generator, stuff like that. So it's got that context. But the other thing that I did was I built a brand kit generator. So again, in a similar line, it asks a load of qualifying questions. I give it the knowledge files. It understands the business. And then basically it creates a file which says like who we are, what we do, what we would say, what we wouldn't say, what our mission statement is, what our vision and values are, what services we provide, etc., etc. And that's just a plain text file. It generates that at the end. Then all I do is I put that into every custom GPT as knowledge. I don't have to tell it any of that because it knows, it just reads it. So then it knows that it's writing a post or it's writing a social media content, for this company, who they are, what they do. And I don't have to tell it.
And
so I'm saving time. Those are two nuggets I would say. Build your tone of voice. If you have a look at my LinkedIn, I haven't been doing much, because obviously I work for a company and I didn't particularly want to be posting stuff about AI and them sort of thinking, well, what's he doing? Maybe thinking, I might be, looking to leave or something like that. So I've sort of held back from doing it. But I built my own tone of voice, Peter Lowe tone of voice. So when I instruct it, I just give it a couple of lines and I say, I want you to write a LinkedIn post, standard format, hook, body, call to action, and then some hashtags. And then I might just put some very quick thing and then it will write it for me. So, but it sounds like me because in the description it said can be sarcastic, can be quite flippant, don't make it polished and professional. This person, is someone you would trust in the boardroom. He'll tell you how it is, no fluff, etc., etc. So when it writes my posts, it sounds like me. I don't have to change hardly anything.
And what's the best ways you've used to feed knowledge or documents into the custom GPT?
I just upload PDFs if it's like a brochure or a case study that we've got those. So assets that probably people have already got, you can upload those into it. Then they say you can support in text files. Any knowledge that you think it might need, you can put it in there. And then you don't have to keep telling it that we do vegetation management, or in our business, we do that and we do other things, signaling, whatever. You don't have to tell it; it knows. And then you've given it all the qualifying things. You can also put another file in there saying all the contact details of all the heads of departments. So if you're writing a blog, it'll just put the right contact at the end. You don't even have to say this is our standard sign off. This is how you end all articles.
One thing I'd interject with in terms of the knowledge files and stuff is we spoke on an earlier podcast about just they've upped the data storage in terms of how much you can store. So we've been busy populating and updating our GGA AI brain, and where that really came into play, massively came into play, is when you go on holiday as an owner. So it's effectively like a standard operating procedures. It's everything you need to know about how GGA works, how it runs. So when I'm not there or when I'm at meetings or whatever, but when I was on holiday I was fortunate to take August off this year, so I wasn't around for a lot of August. It's Pool 2.0. So literally, it's the equivalent of having an employee who knows everything about every aspect of the business that anyone can query. And 9 times out of 10, it knows it better than myself. So what was happening was the team would go into the AI brain and querying that and getting really accurate results because we'd spent the time. And this is what you've been doing. It's about investing the time up front in the creation of the GPT or the creation of the knowledge base. Again, if you're lazy about creating a GPT and you just go and download 20 files because they're in your company vault somewhere, but you don't really format them for, the right thing, or they've got a lot of junk in there, it'll reference junk. So we've spent a lot of time and we've invested a lot of the team time in the creation of the actual documents that then go into the knowledge base. But that for me was a revolution. So when we came back and when we came back and do our retro, that came up from every team member, was the ability to go, right, there's this scenario, what do we do? And they can just query it and get a really robust answer and a checklist down. Okay, these are the steps to follow. This is when to escalate it. So I think the whole concept we're talking around here about GPTs and knowledge base, I think the big thing that we've all done it. We all start by you've got to experiment. But I think where you've grown to, Peter, is you fully appreciate, do the hard work up front, create the prompts properly, put the knowledge base in there properly, think about what you're trying to do, think about the problem you're trying to solve. But if you do that, the results and the accuracy that you get will be far better than anything you've ever seen. And the sad truth with AI, and the thing it gets a bad rap, which I think is like, it's true, but it definitely makes stuff up. It's a large language model, and it's there as like a big autocomplete, and it'll just tell you what it thinks you're expecting to hear. You've always got to ask it, where did you get that from? And when you use a GPT, it will reference the file. So if I go on and say, what's the name of our podcast? And it says Control-Alt-Dev, I can say, well, where's the source of information? And it'll reference the PDF that tells you everything about how we plan the episode, how we, how we manage it all, and everything it needs to know. And it knows as well to go and visit the app, the Apple Store and the Spotify stores to get their links and everything. So, yeah, I've digressed a bit there, Peter. Sorry, but
no. Just for simplicity, especially for the listeners, Paul, we talked about the AI brain.
Yeah.
And you set up AI brains for Green Guru Apps.
Yeah.
We do SaaS software, Peter. So we've got 3 systems, and I've done exactly that. I've got an AI brain for AdLister, which is one of our products, inventory, and just ship it. So what's the difference between what you're doing and technically what I'm doing in terms of, we've got a brain for each of the software, so that's all they know. And I'm doing what Paul's saying is I'm updating Firefly's notes from meetings we have, any Q&A from issues with customers. What's the difference?
Probably your system is easier to make changes to. So if you upload files into a custom GPT, if that file changes, you've got to go into that GPT and change it. Whereas your system, which is really, I would say, the best way to do it, is if you link into Dropbox, SharePoint, OneDrive, whatever it is, all your files live in there. It knows where to go and look, and it'll go and reference those files. So it's just a better methodology, really. That's the downside of GPTs at the minute, that the files are local to each one. So if someone leaves and we have to update a brochure, I have to update it in all the different GPTs. Whereas in Mind Studio, we can do exactly what you've done. You can put it to a central source, and each of the GPTs goes to that Dropbox or wherever and finds those folders. So what Paul's saying is good. Yeah, you basically, if you're building something, if you put the files in your own knowledge base or locally, it will reference those first, and then it will only go outside of that if it needs to. Whereas you're a bit of a hostage to fortune if you don't put any knowledge files in and just say, ask it a question. What's the source? Is it a reliable source? Et cetera, et cetera. So ChatGPT 5 has eliminated quite a lot of that. There's much less hallucinations, as they call it. It doesn't make stuff up as much, and it's much cleverer. But you probably noticed that the thinking time is longer. So you've got they've tried to simplify it with less models, but the thinking time is longer. And one of the things that I like with Mind Studio is it's platform agnostic. So you're building a workflow. You've got different blocks in the workflow. So one might be just going to go and scrape from Google to get a whole load of URLs for research. You can use the cheapest model. It doesn't need to be clever to do that. So pence, fractions of a pence to go and do that bit. But when you get to the end of it, say when I'm building at the minute is I give it a seed keyword, it goes off, it does some keyword research, it then does a topic map, it then generates some ideas for articles, which I'm the human in the loop, I approve it. It then goes off, it writes a research prompt, goes off into deep research, does all the deep research, returns back with that, and then it writes the article, which is to Google's EEAT guidelines. It also puts all the internal links in, and it structures it so that it's sort of keyword focused. And then it sends it to WordPress, and then from that it generates a prompt, which then generates an image. So the image generation part has to have a different tool, because so you might use, now that one everyone's using is Nano Banana or Gemini 2.5 Flash. So for that generate image model, you just change it to that model. So you're using the best tool at every point of the process. And you can use whatever you like, within reason. They're all in there. They're all sorts in there. So you can pick and choose.
I think that's a level of sophistication, isn't it? Is having an understanding, because not everyone does. Everyone thinks AI is either free or $20 a month. That's what they assume because they use it in a chat environment or whatever. We've learned through all of our experimentation that we found that Claude is by far the best when it comes to code. engineering and code debugging. That's our go-to thing. We've tried OpenAI, we've tried loads of different things. We've tried, loads of stuff in the IDEs, but ultimately the model is the thing that gets you the better results. So the sophistication you're talking about there is having appreciation at this cost. And some things are like, your $1 an hour tasks, and some things are your £10,000 an hour tasks. And it's like, well, I'd put that through a more applicable tool. So with Mind Studio, you can cut and paste which ones you use, and not cut and paste, but integrate. But the sophistication there that you're really talking about is it's almost like agent talking to agent, which is that true agentic AI. So you're involved at one part of the process as an editor, really, to approve, yes, I'm happy with those things, but then it passes it back onto the workflow, and a research agent, then a copywriting agent, then an SEO agent. It's like, that's the way the world's going. And all you have to do, this is like the genuine opportunity and the genuine threat. There's no other way of looking at it, is 3 years ago, what would you have had to do that task? And 90% of businesses wouldn't do that task because it's so labor intensive and because it requires so much skill. Whereas now, by thinking about it properly, creating your prompts properly, engineering it and selecting the best tools, yes, you've invested time in it, but let's just say 40 hours, you've achieved something that would take 4 humans full time to create the same output. That's the real change in all of this, isn't it? Is the ability to create stuff at scale. And going back to the original question from Sean, I think that's one of the distinguishing things about what's different between what Peter's doing, and I'm putting Peter on a pedestal compared to me and you, is he's really thought about the very start of the process. So it's that prompt engineering GPT is an absolute game changer. And anyone listening to this, do it today. I did it as soon as you told me about it, and it changed everything. And so our AI brain has had 3,000% increase. None of the knowledge has changed. It's the instructions it's now been given is the pint of milk analogy. Before, I've stood on this podcast and said, do X, Y, and Z. Now I look at it and I was just going and get me milk. And now I'm telling it, go to this supermarket, get the green label, get it in 4 pints. And I don't want to pay more than £2, which is probably unrealistic. But I think that's an amazing conversation around Mind Studio again, and the value of prompt engineering. I guess.
I think we need to really get Peter back, for another conversation, because we certainly have gone on a long time today talking about this subject, but it's just fantastic just to listen to Peter. So that's it for today. Thanks today to our speaker, Peter Lowe, who's done a magnificent job of explaining all about those intricacies today of prompt engineering and how he's using AI with Mind Studio, and him not being a coder, which is absolutely awesome. So if you want to know more about Peter, we'll put some details in the chat below the podcast. And of course, if you've enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might find it useful. And if you'd like to learn more about Peter, of course, we're going to give you some more information about himself, and we're definitely going to get him along for a second episode, aren't we, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Peter. I knew it was a good shout getting you on. It's I know also we've barely scratched the surface, so thank you very much for joining us today, and it's very much appreciated.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.